The Green Bay Packers get some interesting playoff update news that I will talk about and go over in this video. First, I would love for you guys to leave your comments and let me know. Obviously, the Packers are going to have their challenge going to Philadelphia, tough environment to play. Who's got to have a monster game in order for the Packers to come up with a win? In my opinion, I think Jordan Love has to have a big performance in order for the Packers to come up with a win on the road in Philadelphia. He's, of course, struggled over the last 3 games. So I think it's imperative that Matt LaFleur implements maybe a similar play to what we saw last year on Thanksgiving when they opened up that game on the road in Detroit with a big pass play to Christian Watson. Of course, we're going to be without Christian Watson, which means next man up mentality. The Packers have got to look to somebody else to get involved, probably Jaden Reed or Romeo Dobbs, somebody like that. But the Packers have got to get Jordan Love involved in order to come up with a win. Of course, I think Josh Jacobs is going to get his on the ground. And of course, the Packers have got to stop Saquon Barkley as well. That being said, let's talk about Philadelphia for a moment before we get to the interesting playoff news. The Philadelphia Eagles went 13-4 this season. A couple of their notable wins came against Green Bay, came against Washington, Baltimore, the Rams, and then week 15, their most latest notable win came against Pittsburgh. And I think this was against a Pittsburgh team that has been struggling down the stretch. Mid-season, I would have said Pittsburgh was my favorite to come out of the AFC as kind of that sleeper team to go to the Super Bowl. I think otherwise now because they haven't been playing good football. A couple of their losses, again, they finished 13-4. A couple of the losses came within the division to the Commanders, and then they lose to Tampa Bay. And then they come up with and almost lay an egg against Minnesota. Minnesota wins that one 26-3, and then they lose to Atlanta. That being said, the Packers are going to be facing Philadelphia in the playoffs. And I always find it interesting that our minds go negatively when we start talking about these two teams meeting up at the playoffs. Our minds instantly recall, and I'm guilty of it, the 2003 debacle, that 4th and 26 that the Packers give up. They lose in overtime 20-17. Rather than our minds thinking positively and them being able to overcome that mental hurdle of that 2003 loss, they come up with a big win on the road at Philadelphia in 2010, 21-16. They go on to win the Super Bowl. You can draw a lot of similarities from that 2010 Packer team to this year's Packer team. We're also going to take a look at that in this video as well. So what's the interesting playoff update? That is great news for us Packer fans out there, and not great news if you are a Philadelphia Eagles fan. And it says right here in this article that will Jaylen Hurts play in the playoffs, exploring chances on the Eagles quarterback suiting up in the wild card round. Of course, we all know that he is still in the concussion protocol. That being said, it says in this article that Jaylen Hurts' status for the playoffs is currently unclear as the perennial Pro Bowler is in the league's concussion protocol. Hurts suffered a head injury back in the 22nd of December and hasn't played a snap of football ever since. So even if Jaylen Hurts is able to go and play, it's going to be important and imperative for their offense to get Saquon Barkley involved. So I think it's going to make Jeff Hafley's job a little bit easier because he's going to have to shake off the rust. So they're going to involve Saquon as much as possible early on in order to open up the pass game if Jaylen Hurts is able to go. If he's not able to go, that means they have to turn to Kenny Pickett, a much different outlook of a quarterback situation if you're Jeff Hafley preparing for that. That says the dual threat quarterback must feature in training sessions and pass through the mandatory 5-step protocol before being cleared to return to the gridiron on Monday. Eagles coach Nick Sirianni told reporters that Hurts remains in the concussion protocol. And I haven't heard great news ever since then. So that is great update news for the Packers that he is still in the concussion protocol. Again, this team looks much different without Jaylen Hurts in the lineup. Okay, so how did the Packers do when they played against Philadelphia back in week 1? Well, this is a much different looking team for both parties involved. Jaylen Hurts had a pretty big game. He went 20 of 34, 2 touchdowns, but he also had 2 interceptions. So I think it's imperative that the Packers continue to win that takeaway category. Jordan Love threw 1 interception in this contest as well, but Saquon Barkley was a big storyline in their success. He had 3 touchdowns, 24 carries, 109 yards, and he also did it with 2 receptions, 23 yards, and a touchdown. Of course, they got AJ Brown involved, the big target there. He had 119 yards and a touchdown. So when I talk about Jordan Love needing to get involved and Matt LaFleur needing to get Jordan Love involved early, that absolutely has to happen. And without the presence of Christian Watson there, of course, they've got to do next man up mentality, which means Malik Heath is going to get involved. Romeo Dobbs, Jaden Reed. Jaden Reed had nearly 140 yards on a touchdown when they first met up week one. So he's got to chase that up with an equally as awesome performance. Of course, Josh Jacobs is going to get his on the ground. He's been better as the season progressed. He had 16 carries, 84 yards in that contest, which was really good as well. And the Packers defense has got to step up in a big way. So when we look at the Packers schedule this season, they started out playing Philadelphia. They come up with a loss, and then they end the season playing Chicago. That would have been a win if our starters would have been there. So that's one of those asterisk type games. Of course, the Packers have mentally got to get over that game because, of course, social media is blowing that loss up immensely, and there should be a massive asterisk next to that Chicago loss. That being said, they've still got to get over that mental hurdle of losing the last game of the season to Chicago. When we look at the 2010 Packer team, they started out against Philadelphia, where you can see right here, they win that one 27-20. So that's a different outcome than what the Packers did here, but they end the season with Chicago. Of course, they came up with a win there. I think the Packers would have had a win again if they would have played their starters. So you can draw similarities to their schedule. The Packers kind of struggled down the road in this year. They came up with they went 3-3 over the last 6 games. Again, you can look at the 2010 Packer team. They went 3-3 over the last 6 games as well. They go on the road to Philadelphia. Packers are going to be going on the road to Philadelphia. Aaron Rodgers had a decent game, but they involved Starks. If you remember that, he had 123 yards rushing in that contest. Again, I think Jordan Love has to be the big breadwinner here in this game in order to have the victory. Leave your comments on that. Let me know your thoughts. Who's got to have a big game in order for the Packers to have much success? Again, tough environment to play at Philadelphia. Not looking forward to that, at least that performance. But if the Packers can come up with a win, they go on the road to Detroit. A game in which I cannot wait and I hope happens for the Packers. I really want to see Detroit a third time this season. I know a lot of people may think otherwise, and you may think I'm crazy for saying that, but I love what Kenny Clark had to say earlier in the season of just like, hey, listen, we've got to earn it, but bring Detroit on. I want a third look at them this season. Leave your comments in. As always, go Pack, go.